What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY in the overall market. I'm going to break down what's happening with new pieces of data that just came out, and why Tesla's testing some very, very critical support right now. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. Anyways, as far as Tesla's going, as you guys can see, Tesla's on a downtrend, rejecting off this 490 area, then again at in the 470s. And what's interesting is if you zoom out of the chart, we have this support where this blue trend line happens to be that's been running for many, many months. So going into like the middle of the year, the support has existed, and that's what Tesla's testing right now. We'll have to see if Tesla could hold this or not. And if we don't, there's going to be a risk of more downside. But there are some catalysts coming out that could affect us. So the first thing worth mentioning is I didn't really see any major news that's come out for Tesla. I'm still seeing the same headlines coming out about how regulators from the NHTSA announced an investigation into about 2.6 million Tesla vehicles involving crashes that may have been happening during the remotely summon features. So that's something that's worth noting. This is still making lots of headlines, still affecting Tesla. That's part of why it's a little bit weaker. Then there's also the news from yesterday, which is still affecting us as we start to see services prices going up, which led to more fears about the Fed being a little bit more stringent. So that's part of why the market ended up dipping quite a bit. So now we just got initial jobless claims. This is a little bit below expectations, not too bad. And everything else is so. So just keep that in mind. Besides that, there's not really any significant data coming out for the majority of the day until we get to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we have the FOMC minutes. We'll see what this leads to, as it's going to give us more insights about the Fed's policies and what they announced during FOMC. So we'll see about that. This is not necessarily a FOMC meeting. It's simply just the minutes, which is just a report on paper about what different Fed officials have to say about our economy and such. So please keep that in mind. Look for volatility at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Besides that, for today, for today, we have very minor earnings. We do have Jeffries announcing earnings after market close. That's pretty much it. Don't forget, Thursday is going to be Jimmy Carter's funeral, so the stock market's going to be closed. So it's the first or the last day of trading, so we get a bit of a break. Besides that, tech has been selling off quite a bit, affecting many other indices out there. Besides that, I'm not seeing anything else that's too crazy. Meta is getting rid of its third-party fact checkers services, so that's a new piece of news that's coming out for them. And I'm not seeing anything else that's too crazy on the news. So I just wanted to kind of skip that part for now. Now let's just focus on the charts. So as far as Tesla is going, you guys can see there's a clear downtrend right over here, but we have to try to hold the support where the trend line happens to be. When excuse me, by the time we get our data from the FOMC minutes, we'll have to see if Tesla loses the support around the 387 area. If that fails us, I'm going to be looking for attempts to dip back down towards 381. If that fails us, we dip back down towards, the low 370s, if not 368. And this time I think we might get closer to 368 if we end up losing this. So if 380 fails us, we're looking for 368 as our next target. Please keep that in mind. If we try to rebound, we're looking for attempts to get back up towards this resistance around 394. If we break past that, we're looking for 400 and 402. And if that breaks, we're going to try to push more. I think what's going to happen is when we open, Tesla's going to try to push a bit closer to about the mid 390s. So 395 will likely be tested. If not, we may get close to the high 390s for a small bounce, but then there's going to be a risk of us coming back down and riding this trend line. Tesla may come back down, kind of ride this trend line for a bit, and then as time goes on, we'll have to see if we hold this. If we don't, expect another big dump. So watch that very carefully. We're barely holding support right now. And one catalyst that could affect if we dump or not is going to be FOMC minutes. So just watch for that. So once again, look for a little push upon open. I think Tesla may retest near 390, 395 to 398. But then even if we do kind of push a little bit, we could reject and come back down to the trend line. And if we lose this, expect more downside for 380 or below. So that's my analysis for now. We have something very similar going on SPY. We have this support right over here, which is what SPY is trying to hold. When you zoom out, you guys could quite clearly see we have this head and shoulders. So left shoulder, head and right shoulder. So I think there's a possibility we try to hold this trend line. We try to rebound for 590. And we also have resistance at 591 because that's where our 220 EMAs happen to be. But then we'll have to see if we get a rejection and we end up losing support. So from the way I see it, could be looking for a move like this, and then we might be coming back down towards this trend line. The only issue is we have to see if we first off break that resistance and if we lose this trend line or not. If we lose this could be a break of structure, and there's going to be a risk of us returning to the mid 580s, like 585 or below, could be coming if we end up losing this support. So I'm looking for a move like this, and we'll see what the FOMC minutes bring, if we get some kind of bounce off our trend line or not. But I do think there's going to be a retest very soon. Look for a push upon open, then a rejection and move back down. ES has a similar setup. There's a wick forming here, so I do think it might try to push for 59.80 or a little bit below that, and then we'll see if we get a rejection. If we can't hold above 59.80, we kind of push a bit and reject. We could be looking for a retest of 59.20. That could actually drag the S&P 500 down. If we lose support because of ES, like this support right here, there's going to be a bigger dump, so just keep that in mind. For Nvda, we're looking for 142 as resistance, not to mention 145. Might be an attempt to push here before we reject to come back down to 140. So keep that in mind. If we lose 140, we're looking for 138. I think we're range bound right now between 142 and 140. We might try to push a little bit upon open. We do love to do that, but if we can't reclaim 145, it might just be a little push and a dip lower as we have imbalances to fill, and 138 could still be retested. For Bitcoin, we're still technically on a downtrend. We might try to retest 96,000 before it rejects, but it's still could continue to downtrend back down to 93,000. For NQ, we're technically on a downtrend as well. We have to try to reclaim this trend line. There might be a small bounce here for 21,400. If we break that, we're looking for 21,500 flat. So we could be looking for a small push. And if we reject, then we could continue to fall back down towards 21,250. So look for a small rebound here towards resistance at 21,400 to 21,500. And then we'll see if we get a rejection to start dipping back down towards 21,250. So watch that very closely. For the QQQ, we're making lower highs here, rejecting over and over again. We could try to push for 516, and eventually 518 is our resistances. But then even if we push here, we could reject and start dipping lower towards the 512s. So please keep that in mind, especially as we have our 200 EMA as our support. We're trying to push for 516 to 518, but then we could reject again and continue this downtrend. Look for a push upon open back up to our 20 EMA at 518. If that does not hold, we could be looking for a move back down. Apple has the same setup. We're in a downtrend. We got to try to hold above 241. If we hold this, we're looking for a little rebound as well. And then we could retest 241. If we lose 241 as time goes on, so if we get some kind of pop and then a drop, if 241 fails us, there's going to be a risk of us dumping towards the 238 areas. Just keep that in mind as we downtrend. So that's going to be very key for how we end up moving. For the Russell, unfortunately, we're downtrending. So if you look at this high here, we're coming down, making lower highs. We could attempt to retest 222, and if we reject here, we could be continuing to fall to 220 or below. So not looking too good. We're technically on a downtrend. I'm going to be looking for a retest of 222.5 to 223 at our 20 EMA. Then a rejection back down to 220 is very probable. For coin, we're technically on a downtrend. As you guys can see, we're making lower highs. I'm going to be watching to see, is this going to be forming like an inverse head and shoulders, or do we push this imbalance towards 265 and reject to fill this gap? So if you see this thing lose 257, it might be coming down to fill the gap to 248. So keep that in mind. We may push a bit, but there's going to be a risk of us coming back down to 257. We'll see if we bounce off that or if we lose it. So that's going to be the very, very key level. Amazon might be retesting 223.8 before it comes back down. Be careful with Amazon. There might be a little pop and then a rejection because I still see weakness on this chart where it's still range bound. But look for an attempt to get back up to the 223s. We'll see if we reclaim 224 or not. We may come short and come back down, so keep that in mind. Meta, it could be forming like a cup and handle. We got to try to hold 612. As long as it holds, we could attempt to get back up to 625. But then even if we hit 625, we could reject and come back down as well to like 612 or 607. So look for a push, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. For Microsoft, we're on a bit of a downtrend. So we have 425 as our resistance. If that breaks, we're looking for essentially 428. If this rejects here, we could be dipping back down. But look for a retest of 425 on Microsoft, if not 428, if that breaks. And then we'll see if it reverses here. There's a chance that it could just be making a lower high before it dips lower. So I'm not entirely convinced yet it's reversing. Google may be retesting 193.5. Might see a small rebound off that, but then if we come back down to test it, I think it could be dipping. So it might do something like this where it like bounces and comes back down. I'll have to see if it continues to bounce or if it starts rejecting like this. So I'm watching for a move like that. Anyways, that is it for my video. As far as Tesla goes, we're barely holding support right now. We're at critical support. May rebound a bit, but then there's going to be a risk of rejection. And we might retest this trend line. So we'll have to see if Tesla holds this or not. It's going to be very key for today. Don't forget, we have FOMC minutes at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll see how things go. With that being said, thank you for listening. Have a good rest of your day, and peace out.